Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. Today, we're going to recap an adventure and fantasy film called Chronicles of the Ghost Tribe. So stay tuned and let's dive into this recap together. Many times over the years, strange things have been found in China during various excavations. From bones that do not belong to any known animal, or even dinosaurs, to millennia-old human bodies with their skin and flesh still intact. One of the scientists involved is Professor Yang Xiaolin, who in 1978 inaugurated Department 749 in the Kunlun Mountains, a special team dedicated to specifically unraveling the secret behind all these mysterious discoveries. 1 year later, in 1979, we meet Hubei, who was one of the many soldiers working hard on the mountain excavations. The work is exhausting and he often falls from pure fatigue, but Professor Yang's daughter, the young Yang Ping, is always there to support him and help him regain his strength. Hubei meets her at that moment, but he says he felt like he had known her for a long time. The two have a bond that makes their friend Sang Sun jealous. Then we see the team pulling out of one of the excavation tunnels, yet another giant skull they found from some unknown beast. Hubei tries to approach it curiously, but is stopped by one of the guards. When suddenly the cave starts shaking and explodes out of nowhere, generating a destructive shock wave that is sweeping everything in its path, devastating the entire camp. The soldiers, led by Officer Han, prepare to fight, but the only ones to come out of the cave are Professor Yang and some workers. However, this incident is not a complete loss. An alternate path has opened up inside the mountain, so they will send a special team to accompany Professor Yang in the investigation. Yang Pin immediately volunteers to help her father, and this causes Hubei to offer himself instantly as well, which in turn makes Sang Sun also want to go along with several other men who also volunteered. The team enters the cave and follows the discovered path until they come across a giant abyss, which they begin to climb while watching a creature resembling a butterfly flying around them. After a while, they arrive at an ice platform with a deep fissure in the middle, so they also descend through it until they find an unexplored cave full of strange fossils. After wandering for a while, they find an exit where there is a cliff and several mountains, with a larger one standing out among the others. There, Professor Yang tells Hubei that legends say that somewhere in this area is the door to an ancient kingdom belonging to a secret government. However, their conversation is suddenly interrupted when the other soldiers inform them of a very important discovery, a giant footprint in the snow. While Han and the rest of the team finish installing a door at the mountain entrance, Professor Yang and his men begin to follow the trail of footprints to find the beast that left them, which is actually nearby, but they didn't notice it because it blends in with the mountains. Further ahead, the creatures they first encounter are the small flying beings from the cave, but upon closer inspection, they realize that they don't look like butterflies, but rather a strange type of bat. Nothing happens when one of them lands on Yang Ping's arm, but when the professor sees one up close, he realizes that the creature changes color and seems to attack him. But quickly, one of the soldiers grabs it in his hand, and this proves to be a mistake. Then it quickly begins to burn with a blue flame at an alarming speed until there is nothing left but its bones. Soon, they are all surrounded by these bats and the soldiers start shooting to scare them off, but end up losing some men to the blue fire anyway. All those shots make the giant beast go away, or its sudden heavy turn causes an avalanche of snow. This causes the team to run down the mountain for their lives while the snow swallows up many of the soldiers who lag behind, but there comes a point where they cannot continue, as there is an abyss in front of them. They have no choice but to jump, but before that, Professor Yang ties Hubei and his daughter together. The pair falls and the rope gets stuck on a piece of ice and, after moving back and forth a few times, the friction causes the rope to break and they fall. Months later, when he wakes up on a train, Hubei says he does not understand how he survived that fall, especially after losing even more men who died from hitting their heads or being impaled by ice. When he wakes up at the bottom of the abyss, only 14 members remain: Yang Ping, Hubei, Professor Yang, and Sang Sunday. After recovering as many supplies as possible, the very small team now lights some torches and continues their exploration. They come across a huge cave with a tall tower in the middle surrounded by ruins of buildings that Professor Yan calls the Sacred Palace of Kunlun. The tower is said to have 9 levels where demonic creatures were sealed, and that is what Professor Yang has been looking for all along. He kneels in reverence and lights a candle that is on some kind of altar, creating a high flame that causes a flock of bats to appear and surround the tower with a red glow. Professor Yang believes that Hubei and his daughter can open the door of the tower, so he sends them, and when they enter hand in hand, the professor's theory proves true, as the door opens and begins to glow, while a light appears at the top of the tower, summoning a series of spirits that fill the room. But all of this suddenly disappears when Sang Sun hysterically blows out the candle, not liking the idea of opening and messing with something that has the name of a demon. The cave begins to collapse, so the group leaves before they are caught by the rocks or bats, which are now chasing them. Sang Sun sacrifices himself and stays behind his bait, being killed by the blue fire of the bats, but killing many of them when his body explodes. There is still a flock of free bats, and they go after the remaining trio, who have at least managed to stay some distance away from them. They find an exit, but they can't go far, as it leads them to a very high edge behind a waterfall. The bats catch up to them, and while Hubei tries to ward them off with a torch, they manage to bite him and start a fire on his shoulder. Yang Ping pushes him off the edge so he falls into the water and extinguishes the fire, and she and her father quickly follow him. Hubei and Yang Ping meet underwater, but are quickly separated by another giant creature resembling a dinosaur that captures Yang Ping in its mouth and takes her away. Devastated, Hubei swims out and makes his way back to base in freezing temperatures. The burn on his shoulder is treated while Officer Han tells him that they have found all the bodies of the expedition, except for Yang Ping and her father, so Hubei is the only survivor. He decides to abandon this life and return home, but during the train journey, he continues to imagine that Sang Sun is there with him and his fellow soldiers singing, but he is disappointed when he sees that it is only an illusion, that in reality, everyone is dead. Hubei gets off at a train station near the field and is picked up by his new employer, Mr. Wang, without knowing that Officer Han and the scientist named Chen Dong are looking for him. The year is now 1982, and Hubei starts working at Mr. Wang's library, which provides him a very peaceful life. When they go to have lunch together, Mr. Wang takes him to a local restaurant where Hubei is shocked to reunite with a childhood friend named Wang Kaixian, also known as Fat, who works there with the local band entertaining the customers. Hubei suspects that Mr. Wang brought him there on purpose. While working at the library, Hubei comes across a book from Professor Yang's research, which includes an illustration of the demonic tower, making him realize that opening it has always been the professor's goal and that he always knew that Hubei and Yang Ping could do it, which is why he tried to keep them together and safe. Meanwhile, in Department 749, explorers find a coffin with a living woman inside who bears a striking resemblance to Yang Ping but doesn't remember anything about herself, so they give her the codename Shirley. She is kept locked up and under constant surveillance while receiving treatment. Going back to Hubei, he continues receiving books from Professor Yang at the library with specific pages marked for him. With Fat's support, he becomes obsessed with these legends and spends months studying them, which helps him understand the real history behind them. He discovers that there used to be a humanoid race from the demon world, whose ancestors came from Saturn. They are the successors of both demons and humans, and the tower is their legacy. Supposedly, there should have been guardians protecting the tower, but 10,000 years ago, this race disappeared from Earth because humans finally broke free from the demons' control. There are still some questions he can't find answers to, such as why he and Yang Ping could open the tower, why the professor wanted to open it in the first place, and who keeps sending all these books. 3 years later, in 1985, Officer Han is shocked to learn that his team found Professor Yang alive in the mountains, hiding inside a cave. Meanwhile, in West China, the oil city is attacked by mysterious and terrible creatures. They destroy everything in their path, leaving only ruins behind. Professor Yang tells Han that this must be a consequence of opening the tower, so he goes to the area to investigate. This incident seems to have some effect on Hubei's shoulder scar, which starts to bother him frequently, and his visit to the doctor puts him in the system, revealing his location to Officer Han. One afternoon, the pain in Hubei's shoulder becomes so intense that it suddenly ignites a fire on his back, and he begins to exhibit some kind of power, causing all the furniture in the library to float. Mr. Wang appears, treating it as if it were perfectly natural, and explains that due to the bat attack, Hubei's blood has been contaminated by a demonic force that now grants him powers but can also drag him to hell. Hubei doesn't understand how Mr. Wang knows all this, so he uses his own powers to transform the library into an ancient tomb and reveal that he is the protector of Princey of the Soul Lin Nation. He explains that there are also guardian spirits there, just as there were in the tower, including Sang Sunday. Wang explains that Princey was Hubei's predecessor and that he led humanity against the technologically advanced alien demon race that had ruled over Earth. Princey used his own body to seal the tower, and most of the demons left the planet, although some of them hid and assumed human form, going as far as marrying humans. They want Hubei because, as a descendant, he is the only one who can open the tower and unleash the demons again. Meanwhile, in Department 749, Officer Han is furious to discover that his team has lost Professor Yang, but a sudden piece of news changes his mood for the better. Shirley has awakened and claims to have her memories back, so she wants to search for her father along with Hubei. Han travels to the library to recruit him, but Hubei refuses to return to action after witnessing so much death on the last mission. However, he quickly changes his mind when he learns about Yang Ping, who now identifies as Shirley, as he deeply misses her. Wang thinks it's a bad idea for him to go since the demons want to capture him to reopen the tower, but Hubei wants to understand how Yang Ping came back to life, and now the spirits of the beasts are also attacking the prince's tomb, so something needs to be done on site. Hubei leaves the library with Fat, who wishes to help. They travel to northern China where they meet the team that will search for the professor, Qindong, a woman named Weiwei, a group of soldiers, and of course, Shirley. Hubei can't contain his excitement when he sees her again, but while she remembers her name, she acts cold towards him and insists on being called Shirley instead of Yang Ping. Afterward, the team journeys through the desert using camels. After a few peaceful days, they suddenly encounter a fierce sandstorm and quickly flee to leave it behind. They run and strangely pass through some kind of barrier without realizing it, which is the only reason the sandstorm no longer follows them, keeping it at bay as they enter the ruins of the oil city. Once they dismount in a safe area, they realize they have lost some men during the escape, including Fat. He and 3 other men were left behind in the middle of the desert with only one camel, so they try to reach a well they saw in the distance when they are suddenly attacked by a demon creature resembling a werewolf, but one that walks in daylight. They split up as they flee, and the demon kills one of the soldiers while the rest of the group reaches the well location, only to find a second monster there. It kills another man, leaving only Fat and a friend who find a bicycle and head towards the oil city to reunite with the rest of the team, who have been exploring around and found nothing but ruins and corpses. Upon hearing about the demons, Hubei wants to leave to avoid another massacre like the one that happened last time in the mountains, but Qindong and Shirley want to stay and complete the mission. There isn't much time to discuss it as creatures find them, and the team must prepare to fight. They arm themselves and shoot at the first monster that jumps out from behind a bus to attack them. They seemingly manage to kill the creature and, thinking they succeeded, they chase after the second one that quickly appears. The monster jumps from side to side, merely observing them while the team watches back in astonishment. The monster then takes a big leap and moves farther away. At that moment, Shirley runs off and enters an abandoned school, followed closely by Hubei. Meanwhile, the rest of the team discovers that the first werewolf they killed is no longer there. Inside the school where Shirley and Hubei entered, he sees several bodies hanging from the ceiling and a hole in the ground. He enters the hole and finds a tunnel that leads to a kind of tomb. There's a monster there as well, which pushes Hubei and injures him. But before it can kill him, Shirley appears and tames the monster, making it leave. She then uses her powers to levitate Hubei's unconscious body into the coffin, which she closes before leaving. Back in the city, more creatures arrive and seem to sniff out the team, who hide on the upper floors of buildings to shoot with silver bullets and long-range rockets. They manage to hit some of them, but most of the werewolves dodge the attacks and climb the buildings, capturing some of the team members who stand no chance. Weiwei manages to hide in a small destroyed shop, followed by one of the creatures. There, she avoids being found by pretending to be a mannequin. However, when she tries to take a photo, it makes a noise, immediately drawing the attention of the monster, which starts chasing her. She runs for her life and manages to get on a bus with Fat while they do their best to survive the constant attacks the monster is launching at the bus. Hubei wakes up inside the coffin and is desperate to get out, but he realizes something magical is happening. His wounds are closing and healing at an incredible speed. The spirit of Mr. Wang appears before him, saying that the coffin will help the prince come back to life. Then, Hubei finds himself falling into darkness and appears in front of the tower. There, he finally discovers what happened to Yang Ping. The beast that captured her took her to the cave and threw her into the fire, burning her body and making her suitable for the demon queen to possess. Now, at this moment, Shirley is controlling the creatures and releasing them into the city. After the beast disappears, Hubei approaches the tower to talk to the spirit of the queen, discovering that Yang Ping was the other person who could open the door as her descendant. The demon queen refuses to give up Yang Ping's body and points out that killing her would also kill herself. Hubei then vows to find a way to free Yang Ping, and, laughing at him for it, the queen sends him back to the city. Finding the monster attacking the bus to get to Fat and Weiwei, Hubei quickly eliminates it to free his friends, but he can do nothing for Qindong, who is hanging on the edge of a roof, almost being caught. One of the monsters lunges at Hubei, tossing Fat and Weiwei aside, but Shirley, needing Hubei to open the door of the tower, jumps to his defense, throwing a car at one of the monsters to drive them away. Those who are still attacking their friends are nearby and ready to eliminate them. Qindong even points the gun at his own head, choosing his own death instead of letting a demon do it. But at that moment, Hubei looks into Shirley's eyes and realizes he will never have Yang Ping back, so he shoots her 3 times, causing all the demons to disintegrate and the tower to collapse. Admitting that Hubei is the only one with the power to kill her, Shirley kisses him before falling unconscious and reverting back to being Yang Ping. Hubei mourns her death, but Yang Ping suddenly speaks and expresses how happy she is to see him once again. Hubei carries her body and takes her to the prince's coffin, hoping to heal her. He lies down with her inside the coffin, and as he touches his forehead to hers, he has a vision of her memories. Yang Ping had powers since childhood, including the ability to bring animals back to life, but her mother forbade them from using them. It was only when she saw her mother burning in blue flames that she understood her mother was a descendant of demons who took on human form and married common people. Thus, when they reached a certain age, they would suddenly die in this way from the blue flames. That's why Professor Yang had researched the tower throughout his life. He hoped to one day save his daughter from the fate that awaited her as well. Back in the cave, the only reason they survived the fall was because Yang Ping used her powers to revive them. Before the connection ends, Yang Ping tells Hubei that she loves him and asks him not to give up on finding her father. Hubei respects this wish and leaves the desert with his team on camels, ready to continue the search, while a massive beast watches them from afar, indicating that the adventure is not over yet.